Hello guys, long time no see. I had a chance to miss you all a lot actually, and today we'll be talking about Linux Plus certifications that I passed this week. Don't mind my doggy Barney, he's gonna be in and out of the video at some point. Some of you know, some of you don't know, it took me a lot of time to actually get to the point when I passed this certification. In the middle, I had lots of personal stuff going on. As you may see, this is one of it. I'm expecting a baby. Second, I was preparing for a thesis on my master's degree, and this is all on top of my work, on top of actually maintaining the household and dog and everything. The most important thing that I managed to pass it, which is the fact that I'm very happy about. And now closer to the topic about the exam and certification itself. As you may know, I bought this book around a year ago. This is XK0004. By the way, somewhere here or here you should see my certification. I passed 005 exam, the most recent exam that has been recently published, because I actually couldn't make it to pass the 004 by the time it is expired. I think it was January 15th or something. And but since I didn't want to buy another book, I still continued using this book for preparation for 005, and of course matching it with the objectives. So some of the stuff that wasn't in this book, I was learning on top of it, and some of the stuff that was in this book but wasn't in the objectives, I obviously was just reading through it but wasn't focusing too much. And these are the exam objectives. As you may see, I use the objectives a lot for my notes and etc. I usually print them one-sided so that I can take notes on the second side. As all of my CompTIA and AWS certifications, I passed this one online using Pearson online proctored exam, and it was quite familiar experience to me. I was quite used to it, and I felt quite comfortable about taking an online exam because obviously you do it from your home and it's very comfy. And as I said, it's not my first time experience with online exams, so I was quite happy about it. I had 63 questions with 3 performance-based questions in it. The third performance-based question was not quite performance, but rather multiple choice and performance mix. So if we discount that, I'd say there were 2 real performance-based questions and 61 multiple choice question. They say it's gonna be up to 90, but honestly, I had only 63, and I had quite a lot of time. The exam takes 2 hours and something. As I was going through the questions, I was looking at the time on the top right hand corner of the screen, seeing that, oh my god, it's still 2 hours or it's still 1 hour left, but I'm almost finished with multiple choice exams. So from the time perspective, I'd say the time is enough. There was no timing problem. So I remember one of the CompTIA exams, I believe it was Security Plus, I submitted it in the last 5 minutes. Or actually the system submitted it for me. Like I was out of time and it was submitted automatically. So this is not the situation I had during this exam. So for time-wise, it was perfectly fine. What then? The resources that I've used. As I said, I continued using this book because I spent £30 on it and I didn't want it not to be used. And so I continued reading chapters and I finished this book. It's written in an interesting language. It provides all the details. It's impossible for you to remember everything written in these books though. And at the end of each chapter, you've got the multiple choice questions that I didn't do, honestly. I was just reading through the chapters and going to the next chapter after each previous, and I didn't do multiple choice exams at the end. What I'd say was the key resource for me passing this exam is Jason Dion's course. It's Jason Dion Linux Plus 005 preparation course for Linux Plus. And then I thought he doesn't have practice tests, but then I realized that he does have practice tests for Linux Plus as well. The practice tests are in a normal format that all of other his practice test courses are. It's like 5 to 6 tests consisting of 90 questions, and I purchased that course as well and did all of the practice tests. And basically in the end, as I was looking through all the objectives of the exam, I just saw that Jason Dion covered them all, and the book itself covered them all as well. So I had an idea of each objective, of each bullet point in the objectives before I went into the exam. When it comes to my Linux experience, you know that I work in IT. My work is not directly related to Linux because I use cross-platform environments in my work. I use Mac. My own work laptop is Mac. And then I use Windows, I use Linux. But out of all these 3 operating systems, I'd say I use Linux 60-70% of the time. So I had more or less understanding of how Linux works. Easy commands like cd, change directory to another directory, cp, copy, or move files, or netstat, or IP address. I knew all of these commands already because they are just considered the simple commands that you use in your everyday life. But the fact that I knew it doesn't mean that you wouldn't be able to pass this exam without knowing it, actually, because you can easily learn it. As I said, this is simple stuff. About difficulty of the exam, I'd say exam was difficult. Incorrect wording. I'd say exam was more difficult than I expected. I passed it with 721 points on a scale of 900. Based on Jason Dion's practice exams, you would think that the exam is going to be easy in terms of commands that you use, because Jason very often he just puts the list of commands and which command would you use in this case or in that case, and adds max 1-2 flags to the command. But in reality they put huge commands with lots and lots of different flags, and there can be 1 flag changing in each answer or 2 flags, so you should have a clear understanding of what each command does to answer the question correctly. You of course can use your imagination, your intuition. For instance, -v flag, it either means verbose output to see more information in the output of the command, or it means verify. With RPM packages or different commands, it means verify. You want to verify your packages, you want to verify if your files are installed, and etc. So there are usually 2 most probable use cases of -v flag, and this is the same with other flags too. Based on your intuition, you can get out of the situation, but honestly it was really hard to choose the correct command that does exactly what they want the command to do. And my palms were constantly sweating throughout the exam. Sometimes the questions themselves were unclear. You may know that CompTIA is not the best in actually wording their questions correctly. So sometimes they were asking which of these commands would do the non-persistent changes. And I look at the commands, and to me it seems like all of them do non-persistent changes. After exam finished, I googled these commands and I realized that all of them really do non-persistent changes. So that's why you should base your answer on the correct usage of flags that these commands put forward, and because all of them basically are non-persistent. From that perspective, it was hard. I used my intuition a lot. I was stuck with network-related commands, and I'd advise you to focus especially well on network-related commands. let me quickly get to that. Well, the ones like IP table, IP address, firewall, CMD, really, dig, root, and etc. It is objective 1.5. They've got all the networking commands here. You should be able to use them with different flags, understand how they work, and etc. It is very, very important. Theory based, I wouldn't say that exam was hard theory based. Everything that I covered in Jason Dean's course and in this book was basically enough to answer their theory related questions, or questions that administrator is doing something, what would you advise him to do, and etc. It was quite easy, and the resources that I used, they were enough to cover the theory questions of the exam. For the performance-based questions, I'd advise you to know the objective 1.2 to be able to use different file editing commands, file and directory operations in order to get the output that you are expected to get, and to be able to identify which command would lead you to which output. Honestly, it's quite easy to get the idea of it, because you basically create a text file and you use these commands to edit this text file in different ways, and that helps you to understand what each command will provide you with. So given that you practice these commands, you're gonna do it without problem, and performance-based questions are gonna go through just fine. Were there easy questions? Well, on the contrary to Jason Dion's practice questions, where there are a lot of easy questions, like, under easy, I mean direct. So which command would you use to list your physical volumes? And you're like, PVS. Or which command would you use to list your virtual logical volumes or virtual volume groups? VGS. There were just 3 to 4, maybe 5 questions with direct question and answer. Well, yeah, I'd say 5, but all others were actually more convoluted. You should catch their wording. For instance, sometimes they put the specific word that changes the answer that you would give to the question. For instance, you can see that there are 2 ways to resolve this situation, but because they say what would permanently help, and it changes your perspective of the question. As I said, CompTIA likes tricky wording, so you should really read every word. It is especially good for those for whom English is not their first language, because we are used to reading everything very clearly to understand what they want from us. For people for whom English is their native language, it might be a bit harder, because they like reading between the lines and they like reading very fast. So some of the words may slip out of their attention when they're answering the questions. What would I do differently for the Linux Plus exam? Well, I would certainly practice more networking commands so that I wouldn't be so freaked out on the exam if I'm gonna make it or not, because honestly there were a lot of different use cases of networking commands, and as I said, all of the commands were in full format with many different flags. Don't expect like them asking, which command would you use to configure your firewall, and you're like, firewall CMD. No, this is not going to happen. That wasn't the case on the exam. All of the commands had a load of flags that they were using, and you needed to choose the command that is correct, whether a certain flag should be used or should not be used, if it's needed or not needed. My advice to you, well, as I said, go through all of the objectives. There are just 4 objectives on the contrary to the previous exam. There are less objectives in this one than in the previous, so obviously go through all of them. Make sure you understand them. Make sure you understand containerization and orchestration tools, which programming languages they use, why. For instance, in the objectives, For instance, in the objectives, they have they're listing the utilities that you can use for containerization or orchestration. For instance, Ansible, Puppet, Chef, SoulTrack, Terraform. And you should be able to understand why would certain company use Terraform or why would they use Puppet. Obviously, there are certain differences that these utilities offer, and you should be able to differentiate between these differences and answer which tool is going to work best for the specific company. For instance, depending if they want agentless or agent-based infrastructure, if they want to use Python, or if they want to use several programming languages in their development, and etc. My second advice is to, of course, if you don't have Linux, which most probably is the case, Linux OS I mean, install the VirtualBox on your laptop, because this book starts from the installation of VirtualBox. Jason Dion's exam starts from installation of VirtualBox. That's why I advise you to install the VirtualBox and install the version of Linux that you're planning to use. Although they provide different examples of different versions, for instance, some of the advices are related to Red Hat or CentOS, other advices are related to Ubuntu Linux. I would say go with just one version, because honestly this is enough. Focus on CentOS or Ubuntu. I had Linux Ubuntu virtual system, and I had Linux Mint, which is Ubuntu based virtual system too. I also deployed the CentOS Linux server that is just command line based, but I didn't use it as much because honestly Ubuntu was enough, especially most of these commands that they provide. They are common Linux commands that can be used on any Linux distribution, or in edge cases you can just download the packages for those commands and use them on your Linux OS. But this also comes down to the fact whether you have enough time for it or not. If you've got enough time, if you're eager to play with Linux, if you have limited experience of Linux, perfect, just go for it and get as many Linux virtual machines as possible with different Linux operating systems on it, and this will help you to build up your knowledge on different Linux distributions. If you don't have enough time, one distribution is going to be just fine. Regarding the price and voucher and etc., as I always do, I just bought a voucher of CompTIA's online shop and then used that voucher to register with Pearson. There was nothing special. When I passed Linux Plus, my A+ exam got renewed, so my A+ exams expiry date is now 2027, which I'm very happy about. And I got a stackable certification. I've written it down just to show you because I couldn't remember its name. CompTIA Systems Support Specialist. Apparently you get this certification when you pass A+ and Linux Plus. I guess another question that you would like to ask me is why I chose Linux Plus when there were other Linux certifications, be it LPI or Linux Plus, which are general, or Red Hat and other Linux distribution specific certifications. Well, I went for Linux Plus because I know CompTIA. I passed several exams with them. It was something familiar to me. I have familiarized myself with objectives, given the old exams objectives or new exams objectives. They looked perfectly fine to me. I was very happy with the fact that they're asking about containerization, orchestration, which is very important. And there are lots of new job openings and jobs related to these specific functions. And network-wise, file editing-wise, I was happy with questions posed by CompTIA and with their objectives. But of course, there are many other Linux-related certifications that you can go and look for. Since all of them are focused on Linux, the content is gonna be more or less similar with only slight deviation. At the moment, I'm thinking about my next certification, Probably it's going to be AWS. The reason being that AWS unfortunately doesn't accept continuous education units to increase your certification's expiry date. Their certifications just expire in 2 years. That's it. If CompTIA is 3 years, AWS is 2 years, which is very inconvenient, by the way, and the fact that they don't expect continuous education units is very inconvenient too. And my AWS certification expires in November this year. That's why I'm gonna go ahead and prepare for that one. But my heart lies for Red Hat certifications. The more I work with Linux, the more I learn about Linux, the more I work in the IT industry, I realize that the Red Hat is a very important Linux distribution to know about, because this is one of the only Linux distributions that can work for corporations. So it is scalable. It is working well in corporation environment. For instance, like Linux with its Active Directory, with its different functions that allow you to manage the company, basically manage the user accounts, manage the permissions, mandatory access lists, and etc. So Red Hat meets this demand and offers this flexibility that Linux operating system has. At the end, I just would like to wish you good luck if you're preparing for Linux Plus. If you're not preparing for Linux Plus but are planning to, don't be like me. Don't let yourself to take so much time to prepare for the certification, and pass it as soon as possible, because Linux is a very important and interesting operating system to work on, and your job opportunities, your price for the recruiter is gonna increase as you have this certification, and as you can prove that you're capable of understanding and using Linux operating system. It took me 2 years of it took me 2 months of hard work to prepare for Linux. Before that, my preparation for Linux was rather on and off. It wasn't like as concentrated as I would like it to be. So I just discount that time because, as I said, I was submitting my thesis, I was pregnant, morning sickness and all that, and job. Now, when I'm done with my master's degree, I obviously had more time to focus on my certifications. See you in the next video, and I was very happy to see you all. Please don't forget to put like on my video, and don't forget to subscribe if you wanna follow my certification path and my path in IT further on. Thank you very much for being with me, and have a nice day. Bye!